Moving on to item 301, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 302, approval of tonight's agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion by Charlotte, seconded by Jim. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item 401, approve a modification of minutes from the August 7th Governing Board meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes from August 7th Governing Board meeting.
The motion by Charlotte, seconded by Monica. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I abstain, so that's 4 ayes and 1 abstention, because I was not at the last meeting. Moving on to 501, and before we get to the consent agenda, I think there was something Dr. Driscoll wanted to say about one of the items on 503.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So with 503, I got some information that I wanted to share. So in that item, it talks about Kia Carnival vans. And so part of our district transportation fleet, we actually have vans that we use. We normally use Ford, but Ford stopped making the van, the 10-passenger van, so now we go to Kia. So as part of our bond, I want to say in 2016, transportation was on there for us to do buses and all that. This falls in line with that. So it's really to replace some of our existing fleet of vans. So I wanted you to have that information before you vote it. So you know, yes, our bond is actually paying for this, and it's part of that refresh cycle of those vans that transport students. We transport students in them.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion by Charlotte, seconded by Jim. And Monica, do you want to say?
I'll abstain.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries with 1 abstention. As part of the consent agenda, I wanted to thank Commercial Properties, Hall Foundation, Town of Guadalupe, the U.S. Badminton Educational Foundation, Siwa International Phoenix Chapter, and Back to School Clothing Drive Association for all of their donations. Mike McGinney, do we have anybody? I don't think so. Doesn't look like it. Audience is very quiet, so usually signals nobody. Moving on, 601, Celebrate Excellence.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Tonight I have a few items to celebrate. All right, if this clicker works. Uh-oh, there we go. Most Tempe elementary schools are named after individuals that made a profound impact on our schools, our district, and our community. The students at Joseph P. Spercali had the fortunate opportunity to meet their school's namesake, Mr. Joseph P. Spercali. He made a special visit to the school's recent family game night hosted by their PTA, where students, families, and Mr. Spercali came together to enjoy snacks and play games such as Bingo, Battleship, and Connect 4. Fuller Elementary students recently received a surprise visit by prospects from the Los Angeles Angels organizations. Why don't we have the Detroit Tigers? Students were able to chat with the baseball players, ask questions, and even receive autographs. A big thank you to the players who took part in this visit with our students at Fuller Elementary. I'd like to highlight a special employee from Aguilar Elementary School, crossing guard, Mr. Lawrence Saxon. Mr. Saxon went above and beyond recently for an Aguilar 3rd grade student by gifting him a scooter, allowing the student to get home faster in the warm weather. Mr. Saxon had an unused scooter, so when the need arose, he decided to pass it on, resulting in one very happy 3rd grader. In addition, Mr. Saxon is often known to help the custodial staff upon the completion of his crossing guard duties. You can often find him picking up trash, moving furniture, and ensuring that Aguilar campus is always looking great. A big thank you to Mr. Lawrence Saxon for his extra care and support for our students at Aguilar Elementary School. And that concludes my Celebrate Excellence for this week.
All right, 701, review of governing board goals.
I think this is the Dr. Driscoll show, two for two. All right. So if you guys remember last year, or right around this time, we did some goal planning at the governing board. So I wanted to review those from last year and then give you some updates on some of the progress we made on those goals. As always, our strategic plan front and center, 2.1, design, refine district curriculum, instructional practice, and assessment tools that are aligned with the standards. Last year, the board created a goal that by 2028, less than 20% of our third grade students would fall into the minimally proficient for AASA ELA. And so what we have on the screen for you guys to see is our previous year, we had 52%. Last year, 50.4%, so about 1.6 decrease, which is actually good in this case to go down of our students. We expect that probably will go down even more this upcoming year with some of the changes we made in our instructional practices and assessment tools that we provided for students and teachers. But that was what we had for this last year. So I'll leave it up there and answer any questions that you might have. And I have people in the audience that might ask questions as well. But any questions on this one, goal one? Is it still a goal that we want to keep? I hope. Because we said by 2028. So, all right.
Dr. Driscoll, do we have more total number of students that would fall in this category? And then,
That's a good question. Did we have more third graders in this from the previous year? Do you know that? I can get that information. Yeah, their enrollment. Okay, I can get you that information.
we're just doing percentages, and so like if it was several dozen, and from that standpoint, that's the only reason I ask it.
Yeah. All right, I can get you that information. All right, so goal 2, we have another question? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Driscoll, one of my questions on this is something that I've noticed when speaking to the public that makes them a little bit confused is sometimes we talk about this percentage proficient and this percentage non-proficient, and it doesn't seem to be in conversation flowing to where it's continuous one way or the other. So like what people just heard you say might be that was a good thing that we're doing worse instead of that was a good thing that we're doing better. So
No.
let's get that. Like maybe we got to find another way to go with proficient, unproficient. Like it's either so proficient. I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? Like if we're in this, right? Like we hear about this every day and we're talking about it. We understand proficiencies and all this stuff. The public just wants to know, are kids doing better?
Yeah, and so one of the things that I would say for this one is the state actually has this as a target area for so when we get our letter grades for schools, this area is one of the areas that we're measured on, and it basically says how many of your third grade students are scoring minimally proficient, which is in a scale there's highly proficient, proficient, partially proficient, minimally proficient. So you heard the term move on when reading. These are the students that would qualify for that. So these students, if they do not, if they score in this range, they would be subjected to not be able to go to 4th grade unless they pass this or get an exception weight. So that's why this is important. So that number going down from 52% to 50%, that actually means we had less students scoring in that range, which is a good thing. So this is one of the ones like you actually want the number to go down instead of up because you want more students or less students scoring in this range and move. So this is why we did this one, because this is one that if you have a student in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, you probably got a letter if your student has been identified to say, hey, your student's on track not to be proficient in 3rd grade. And so they already start identifying students that early to tell parents like, hey, if your student continues on this trajectory, they will be minimally proficient in 3rd grade and they would be subjected to have to stay in 3rd grade another year. They cannot move forward to 4th grade unless they show proficiency in this area. So that's why this is one that we want to keep. And most parents don't realize that the state has a statute in 3rd grade that says if you don't pass AASA ELA, if you fall in this category minimally proficient, you cannot go to 4th grade. And so that's why we have it. I think we can try to do a better job, but this is like state, And it's really maybe just articulating to our community, like, do you know in third grade that if your student does not pass the AASA, they could be subjected to be held back in third grade and not move forward in fourth grade. So I can think of, we have some people that are better at this than me and look at how we can communicate this out to parents. But this is the only one where it's like, where the state actually puts that in. All the other ones, yes, we should talk about how many students proficient, but this one is the one that actually has real meat for our students because they can get held back in third grade for this, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I get an electric bill that has 2 or 3 columns and it shows how much more, or how much less. And that to me would be a way to graphically do this. And I think it'd be easier for the parents to understand, or the public, you know.
Okay. You guys taking notes out there? I'm taking notes, so we're gonna have to figure out a better communication, maybe visuals to show.
Actually, I think an easy way to explain it to the public is to, and I'm going to say this as a person who is not in the skinny category, that if you explain academic health like we do physical health, like we want people to decrease in weight but increase in strength. We want them to decrease in body fat but increase in muscle mass. There's a give and take on all of it in order to be a balanced physical human being. And that's the same with when we write about academic health. We need them to decrease where they're struggling, and have less kids struggling, and we need to increase where kids are doing better. So, but I actually did have a question.
Yes.
I was wanting to know, oh shoot, hold on. I did have a question. I'll have to think about it. I apologize, I forgot.
All right, so goal 2, by 2028, 50% of our 8th graders, students will be proficient in AASA. So this goes to what you were saying. For context, our 3-year rolling average, so this is from last year, our 3-year rolling average was 18.6% of our students, if I'm saying that right, scored proficient. So that means they passed the assessment in mathematics in 8th grade. Last year, we had 15%. The year before, the 2023 administration, we had 15%. This current year, or last school year, we had 19%. So we saw an increase of 4% of our students in 8th grade get proficiency in 8th grade mathematics. So that's where we went up. But again, we're trying to get to 50%, and our rolling average is 18.6. So we got to get, if I did quick math, 31.4 percentage points up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Driscoll, I think we might have an error in the handouts. I don't know if anyone else says it. Mine says negative 2.4% actual increase from prior to current year.
That's what I was.
So I just want to make sure that one's correct, right? The one you just,
Yeah,
That one's different.
this one's correct.
okay.
This one's correct.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So I know that we've done a lot, thank you, Mr. President. I know that we've done a lot of talking about this, and that we've done it in increments with letting the public know what things we're doing to make the changes to make it better. Because this is definitely something that we're not accepting, and that we're not looking at lightly, and that we're not saying, well, everyone in the United States is having these issues, so it's okay for us to have it. So I just kind of worry a little bit as we throw these numbers out. I want to make sure the community knows that there's been a lot of new reimagined ways to teach our kids just within this year, and we're hoping to see the progress, is that correct, by the end of this next year? And progress not necessarily meaning test scores, but progress meaning the student growth in themselves.
Yeah, and that's why we give kudos to the board by putting it out to 2028, because it's a systematic, it won't start in 8th grade, it actually starts way in the 3rd grade and 4th grade and building up. And so by giving us the 5 years, really what we're saying to you is last year, would that be last year's 3rd graders, by the time they get to 8th grade, that number would be 50% in the cohort, their cohort. Am I saying that correct? All right, they're shaking their head. I'm like, I hope I'm not confusing people. That's what we're really saying. So it really starts, the work starts lower grades and it impacts up. And so as we make those changes in the lower grades, we start to see the benefits of that as they move through the system. Our goal is to have 100%, but we put 50% to be realistic. Coming from 18.5 to there, that would be a huge statistical gain. But the ultimate goal is 100% of our students leaving us with proficiency in anything that we, any subject that we have.
Okay, so I do remember my questions now, and actually they apply to both of these goals, and probably the third one. Can you give us an example of some of the targeted ways instruction has been shifted to, I'll just say, make gains academically?
I can give you one, just in the assessment platform, having an assessment platform that is actually standards-based, so that we can get real-time checkpoints of how our students are doing in relation to the standards that they're actually going to be tested on in March, starting in March of that school year. And instructional practices, using high-yield strategies in the classroom that actually work to improve student attainment or mastery of standards. Actually providing teachers with a roadmap to say, these are all the standards that the state has, and if you focus in on these priority standards throughout that, you should see that significant increase. And awareness, and just being out there and having teams that are looking at the data and using that data to inform instruction, not using that data as just a, what I would call in a rearview mirror. So we get this data and we do nothing with it and we just keep moving forward, using the data to actually make improvements in instruction right there. So those are some of the shifts I would say that we've been implementing. But it takes time. And so that's why I would just, it takes time. And so having it planned out for 5 years, you start to see the shift. And like I said, it really starts at the younger grades and then building up through the system to get them. And so as we prepare our teachers with more information for them to be better and have information that they can make improvements in real time, that is going to be the key, rather than waiting till March, April, and actually when we get the test scores, normally June, to say, oh, this is how our students are doing. That does them no good, because those students no longer will be in their grade level. They will be on to the next grade level, and they can do nothing for those students. So having real-time checkpoints throughout the year so they can actually do course corrections actually will strengthen this, so we don't go at the end of the year and find out that, oh, only 15% of our students can pass that. We would know throughout the year and say, hey, what are we doing now to help these students so that they don't get to that end point and say they can't do it. So those are kind of the things from the assessments, which you guys approved. We switched our assessment platform that are standards-based. We can now go in and look and say, hey, where are our students at right now in relation to the standards that they were supposed to master at this point, and have that data right there. And then we can say, what are we doing if they're not hitting the trajectory that we need them to be? And that's accountability on that, and having that data is the huge part. And then it's what you do with that to help our teachers. And we might find out in like third grade, our teachers, our students across the board are struggling in a particular skill. Then what are we as a district doing to support them, our teachers, to help them to be able to teach that standard? Because we know that if it's more, I always said, if it's more than 50% of our class not getting that, then it's not a student problem, that's a us problem. So what can we do as the district to help our teachers? Because they have the most, I would say, the hardest job in the system. They actually have the students in front of them. And so it's our job as district folks to provide them with those supports. And we can't provide them with supports if we don't have the data to know, like, hey, this is where we're struggling at. If we're finding this out in June, which we can't do nothing for the students that once we have that information. So those are some of the things we're doing. I hope I answered your question.
You did, and more so. What I appreciate about what you said is it mimics, or not mimics, mirrors what Katie Mill has been saying to us from the very beginning, that it has to be very specifically delivered. And that's never been the question about our teaching staff and their ability to grow students. The NWA has shown over and over and over that we can grow students. It just needed to be harnessed in a very specific way. And I was having a conversation with one of my mentors over this last weekend, talking about, social emotional health and teacher burnout and all of those things that we worry about and grapple with on a regular basis. And we were talking about testing and data, because she was a principal when we had to literally tabulate our own data. And, we didn't have just push a button for a report and boom, you have these wonderful graphs. Like, it used to be this laborious process. And I understand, because I lived it, why people were resistant to looking at data, is because you had to do all the work to get there, and you were exhausted by the time you finally got the report. But I was talking to her about how important it is for us to emphasize that if we target the lessons and the instructional strategies towards the standards, that by the time you get to the test where anxiety skyrockets, you're going to decrease the anxiety and you're going to give a sense of calm in the classroom because they've performed this over and over. They know what to do. And hopefully system-wide, at least in the district that we can somewhat control, that we can have better health and job satisfaction for adults and performance satisfaction for students and parents ultimately, because they've had a very specific targeted instruction, and it's ideal. This is the way to go. Thank you.
I'll piggyback on that because we're on public record, so teachers can hear this as well. The beautiful part about having assessments that are standards based and aligned, we also have the ability to show teachers like, hey, your student that got this wrong, this is kind of the similar, what I would say, common misconception that student might have. And so then they can go in real time and say, hey, let me work on it. It's kind of like going to the doctor's office when you go there and they say, hey, tell me your symptoms. And then the doctor makes a formulation and say, oh, I think it's this. Well, now we're given that ability for our teachers to be more like technicians, surgeons, and say, oh, I think this is the root of the problem. Let me go work on this to help the student. And then they can test again and say, yep, they got it. That was the fix. So really working smarter, not harder, and giving that to our teachers, because our teachers are fabulous. And if you give them the supports to be able to do it, they can make those corrections and stuff and help our students. Our next goal was by 2028, 90% of our 8th grade students will pass the civics test before leaving Tempe Elementary Schools. At the time when we did this, we had a 2-year rolling average of 79.2, with the previous year being 77.4. This current year, so this last administration of the testing, we went up to 81. So we're inching closer and closer. And I would say it's the work that we're doing at the elementary trickling up to the middle schools. But yeah, this one I was kind of like, yes, we're getting like really close. But that's the tribute to our teachers. And I would tell you, our middle school teachers, when they were working on Blueprint, were really phenomenal. I came here on a Saturday and they were here working and making sure it aligned. So shout out to Katie Moe and our middle school social studies teachers. They were really vibing into this. So yeah, I think this is one that I hope that next year we even close and so we can push, but I really want 100%, but we put 90. So just throw that out there.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the things that the community has asked is, what is this civics thing and why would they do the civics test? And they don't understand how amazing it is to help them have that done before they get to high school, and it allows them to have another class. Can you explain that?
I'll turn that over to our, who won? All right, look, they're all ducking like I'm not going to touch it.
So the civics requirement is essentially the United States Naturalization and Citizenship Test. And so, can you repeat the question one more time? I'm sorry.
The concern is, or the question is, why would they do it now?
Yes.
And I would like them to understand how great it is that they
Yes.
pass it now.
Thank you. It's most closely related to the standards in the second semester of 8th grade social studies or history. And so that's the benefit to completing the assessment at this time. And it's also because, unfortunately, it doesn't allow them to not take a specific high school class, but what it does do is that it doesn't create that barrier or burden for students while they're in high school, because they don't have to worry about trying to take this test again and again and again, because unfortunately, if students don't pass this test with a 70%, they will not graduate from an Arizona high school. And so there's no reason why we can't have 100% passage rate. We have a lot of great tools, a lot of great middle school social studies teachers, and so that's our goal. And we are giving this multiple times in the spring semester because our goal is to make sure that every student satisfies this requirement when they leave Tempe Elementary Schools.
And then I had a thank you. Thank you. But I'll answer any other questions that you guys might have.
I also want to add on there that the civics exam, not only do high school teachers really appreciate it because high school students are already inundated with even more tests than elementary and middle school students are, but it's one of the few ways that elementary districts can prep kids for high school in terms of getting, fulfilling the graduation requirements. It's an easy box to check, easy relatively, right? They still have to pass the test. But they can literally go online and take this test over and over and over, practicing. It's the same questions. It's 100, if I remember correctly, 100 questions. And if they watch Alexander Hamilton, it helps them a lot. There's lots of ways for them to get this, and it's just one of those state statutes requirements that they have to fulfill. And I really appreciate that this is a focus for Tempe Elementary, because those kids hate sitting as high school students taking that test again that they know that they've already had before. It's, not something they want to have highlighted for them. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Moving on to 801, open call to the public. I believe we don't have any blue cards. Confirmation, correct? All right. Moving straight on to 901, discussion and first review of proposed changes to governing board policy, ACA, sexual harassment. Does anyone have any comments based on this one? All right, moving on. 902, discussion and first review of proposed changes to governing board policy, ACAA, sexual discrimination. Any comments on these? And for the public, again, for a first review, there's nothing to vote on. It's just a first review. So later on, when we get to the second review, that's the ones we vote on. So no one has anything to say on that. Moving on to 903, discussion and first review of proposed changes to governing board policy, GBK staff grievances. Anything there on GBK? Okay. And finally, our last first review, discussion and first review of proposed changes to governing board policy, JII, student concerns, complaints, and grievances. No comments on this? All right. Moving on, 905. This is second review and adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy, BBBA, board member qualifications. Do I have any comments, anything to change in addition?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to note that the proposed changes from the previous meeting are not specified in here. It was regarding the IVP requirement, the fingerprint card clearance.
Then why don't you just pull this one and then we can send it again, or you can put it in writing here and the board can approve.
Yeah, I think the only requirement, the way if anyone wants to wordsmith this, feel free, but as I had mentioned, we discussed last time, one of the requirements for our parents anytime they come into our campuses is that they have to have an IVP card so they can join field trips. And knowing that board members also are on campus, I think setting that standard for us as well, to have an IVP card as well, the fingerprint card.
What section would you like to add it?
Under the first paragraph where it talks about not subject to registration is, that line, eligible for election appointment. So after that, first paragraph, last sentence, and shall obtain an IUP fingerprint clearance card They're good for every, like 7 years? So the first January of, whatever, of election.
Okay. So will you type that in, and then when you guys vote on that, add it with the amendment with that language?
And maybe not say shall obtain, but shall submit application, because it takes like, a couple weeks, sometimes months.
Sure.
Should we say submit and maintain active status? What, is it active status? Is that the correct terminology?
I think if they, and Mike, I'll defer to you, but I think if they have an IBP clearance card and it's on file, we get notification as a district if they violate something that would cause that card to be not in status
I
anymore.
was actually referring to just expiration.
Okay.
So if we just have the January 1 of election, then that would count for every 4 years because it's a 7-year card.
Yep.
So, okay.
So I guess do we have to make a motion to pull it, or?
No, you just, because this is second read, you can add it. You just, when you vote on it, you have to add that language in.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposed changes to governing board policy BBBA, board member qualifications with amendments regarding IVP cards.
All right, I have a motion by Charlotte, excuse me, seconded by Monica. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to 906, second review and adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy GCF, professional staff hiring. Anything anyone wants to say further on this before making a motion?
Yeah, Mr. President, I saw that on, my notes say on the final page, we need to put dates in there and numbers of days. So before we approve this, do we get to choose, Dr. Driscoll, do we get to choose how many days from, or what is that about?
I'll defer to Mr.
Third
McGinney.
paragraph.
I know, I'm looking at, I want to say in the contract language, there's, memory serves me correct, there's actually days that are required from the,
And, sorry, and it is different for different employee categories, so I'd have to go back and reference that. So different for administrators than it is for,
Yeah, I thought it was more complicated than this, but we do need to have that in there
Yeah.
before you approve.
President Miller, would you like us to table this one while we allow the staff to find those exact dates?
I think that would be
Good.
prudent.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to table the 906 adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy GCF, professional staff hiring, to allow staff to find the correct dates.
Motion by Charlotte, seconded by Monica. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 907, second review and adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy GDF, support staff hiring.
GDF, okay.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt, are we 907?
907.
Adopt the proposed changes to governing board policy GDF, support staff hiring.
I have a motion by Charlotte, seconded by Monica. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. 908, second review and adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy IHA, basic instructional program. Allison?
She had a misfire. I just want to point out before we vote on this, that again, this is the only content that has been dissected, the standards that are already in place, that we already are teaching, they're already built into our blueprint, they're within everybody's scope and sequence, but we're being requested by the state legislature to specifically identify certain topics within social studies, whereas with mathematics, we only care about experiences with math. So just wanted to point that out. I would like to propose an amendment to this for B and just put mathematics and omit experiences, because I think that that's very vague. I would rather have mathematics standards or curriculum, just not experiences. Like we're having a, wonderful dinner with candlelight and it's an experience.
I would support that.
Well, we can certainly make a motion as amended.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposed changes to governing board policy IHA basic instructional program with the amendment of striking experiences in favor of standards.
Do I have a second? A motion by Charlotte, seconded by Monica. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, motion carries. 909, second review and adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy JFB, open enrollment.
Mr. President, I have one on this one. If you guys look on, I want to say your page 3, there's yellow. Where I would ask you guys to hold this one. We're actually getting legal guidance to see if it's a state statute to have a specific date, rather than having language that says when our registration period starts. So if you could hold on this one until we get that guidance, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Driscoll, another question that I had is that, do we already have a written information packet concerning the district's application process in place?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President, those were my concerns.
Monica?
Thank you, Mr. President. Also, I'm fine with holding it too, but I think was the only change made was based on the statute requirement to allow preference for
Yes.
armed forces.
Yes.
So what did the previous policy have any dates?
That's what I'm worried about, even in this one and the one that you were talking about, when you look at the advisory, it only added language for the sex, it didn't have any contract language. So I'm wondering if in this upload, something changed out, because it had 15 and it was crossed out. So I want to check on that to make sure that I'm not missing something there.
Thank you. Happy to make a motion to table policy JFB open enrollment for future board meeting.
A second.
I have a motion by Monica, seconded, excuse me, by Allison. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, motion carries. 910, second review and adoption of proposed changes to governing board policy JHD, exclusions and exemptions from school attendance.
I have a question about certified versus licensed. I would be fine with an and/or.
Yeah.
I don't think that we have to be exclusionary, especially with holistic medicine availability. So I'd like to propose that amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would be fine with that. I'm just wondering why, was this a statutory update or was it just a revision from ASBA's guidance?
I thought it was a statutory why they did it, but we can check and just put and/or, and if we come back and find out that we can't, that you can make a revision to it.
Okay, thank you. Did you make a motion, Ray?
I'd like to make a motion to approve, adopt the proposed changes to governing board policy JHD, exclusions and exemptions from school attendance, with the amendment of listing certified and/or licensed medical, mental, and behavioral professionals.
I'll second.
A motion by Charlotte, seconded by Monica. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, motion carries. And finally, 911, discussion, consideration, and possible approval of the behavior intervention technician position and corresponding job description. Dr. Driscoll, did you want to say anything on this, or?
Yeah, so we currently, with this job description, it cleaned up the requirements so we can have more behavioral technicians helping our students. As you guys know, one of the things our staff has talked about is increasing student behaviors. And so we wanted a job description update so that we can get more competitive with getting those support staff. So we currently have BCBAs, and this position, I believe, would actually report to them, and I have Brenda in the audience. So it's really getting more clear on the responsibilities that that position would have to help our teachers and staff members. Brenda, you have anything you want to add to that?
Certainly, Dr. Driscoll. This position would allow, under the direction of the board certified behavior analyst, to give duties to the RBT registered behavior technician to observe and collect data in order to come up with intervention plans for students. So it's to be their eyes and ears so that we can provide intervention support for students within the classroom sooner than later.
Dr. Driscoll, you said this is a job description update. Would this be adding a job, or would this be?
It would be redefining a job description that we currently had.
No further impact on
Thank you, Mr. President. When I was reading this, I think there was an update. It wanted it certified or qualified. And who certifies this? Is there an exam? Is there years of experience, OJT?
I can get you the very specifics, but they do have to take a registered test and a course in order to be a registered registered behavior technician. The current position is a behavior interventionist. That is it currently as a teacher position. That is a change.
Thank you.
So I'm a little slow tonight. I just want to clarify, we're not adding a position that would impact M&O?
No.
It's just a redefining of an existing one?
Yep, it's a redefining of a job
It
description.
sounds like we're moving towards a more specialized individual instead of just like a teacher on assignment.
Correct.
Excellent. I'd like to make a motion to approve the behavior intervention technician position and the corresponding job description.
I second.
A motion by Charlotte, seconded by Allison. All those in favor say aye. 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 Motion carries. Gotten through it. Item 1001, board information.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to thank the schools that have performed curriculum night and game nights and all of the things that are bringing our community back together and making us healthier among each other. And it's great because parents are relying on parents and kids are relying on kids a lot more these days, I see, now that we're making those connections. And it took a long time for the trust, I think, because of COVID. And I see that our turnout rate in the schools that I have visited during these few curriculum nights and events has gone up. So I'd like to thank the schools for doing them. I know it's very hard sometimes to do them because you're like, oh my God, the same parents are showing up that always show up and they already know. But you know what? I'm one of those parents and I don't always know. I mean, I actually learned how to like redo my multiplication this week and I've used it all week and it's way easier than what I learned when I was in 4th grade. So I just want to say thank you on that. As far as health and wellness goes, everybody knows I'm all about that. Preventative care is available to all of our employees and those who are not on our Blue Shield at Sonoran universities on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 7. We've had over 350, I think it's like 371 or 379 people have taken advantage of that and gotten extremely good care. So I want to make sure that they know that that's open to them if they need the help. And it's also homeopathic, but it's also traditional medicine. And the people who I have talked to who have used the system have found out that they're being made better rather than keeping consistently on medication. So with that said, everybody take your stroke awareness quiz because you have till the end of this month, or actually till the end, I think like is it this Friday? It's coming up, like in the next couple of days. So there's flyers all over the school that Sandy put up for everyone, and then you're supposed to take your awareness quiz, and the school that does it the most gets free lunch. That's awesome. And everyone gets testing so they can check their blood pressure because it's one of the leading causes of death is stroke, and we want all of our teachers to be preventative as possible. So make sure you do that. And this is the time to start writing, Eric, 2/15/2025, that's when you're going to run like Sonic. Eric, that's when you're going to run like Sonic again this year on 2/15/2025 is your Love Your Heart Walk. So I just want to bring that up so everyone can get it on their calendar and start preparing.
And I'll walk. But you guys run, I'll walk.
That's it. Thank you, Mr. President.
I guess I'm going to be one of the most talkative ones today. I wanted to say, because I know most people don't know this in the United States, but thank you to the U.S. Badminton Education Foundation. I am a former state champion, just so you know. And I know, you can totally tell. I can totally tell. And why I say this is because badminton, while incredibly popular outside of the United States, not very popular here, specifically in the West. There's scholarships all over the East Coast, not in the West so much. But it is the most cardiovascularly challenging competitive sport that we have on our earth. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to them for getting into our elementary schools and building a love. I have my own daughter who's playing, and yes, that is where I broke my knee last year, is playing badminton, because I'm old and I forget that. So anyways, I was super excited to see that on the consent agenda. And then I wanted to tell the board, we just saw evidence of something that we had designed to happen, which is having the namesakes of our schools be involved. And I just wanted to really highlight that. I know Dr. Driscoll mentioned it, but I wanted to highlight it again. And then this weekend I referred to visiting with my mentor, and I have known her for 35 years and never realized that she was a student of Joe Sprichelli as well. And she was the principal that hired me at Tempe High. And now all these little kids are seeing him and getting to experience how wonderful he is in so many ways. And then I also wanted to say, and this is like the classroom teacher in me, so please indulge me, but there was a synergistic situation here in this room today where I could see eyes and teamwork and collaboration, and I don't think I ever really have noticed how much we are starting to work with you guys as a board and a team. And it just kind of was one of those teaching moments that I was like, oh, this is really moving towards a very strong team atmosphere. And I really appreciate your guys' willingness to work with us and to be open to our questions, and we have way more questions than you probably want to entertain, but you're always patient with us. And I really appreciate all the information you bring to our board meetings, so that we can up here make decisions that hopefully will impact staff and students for the better. So thank you. That was really impressive tonight. And I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank being notified that the police have asked for lockdowns at school and then the release. I think it's great because we know the parents get that information, and it's different police departments because we're in Phoenix, we're in Guadalupe, and that's the sheriff, and then here in Tempe. So I wanted to thank Brittany for putting those out, and particularly on all your break time. Thank you.
Well, to mirror the team aspect that Charlotte was mentioning, I wanted to congratulate a member of our team here. They're a compatriot here at Tempe Elementary, but they're also, come January, going to be a colleague board member. Eric Thompson, going to be on the Osborne Elementary School District. Already won his election. I have to say, winning by cancel of points, pretty sweet. So, so I just want to say congratulations once again. Very excited for you. All right, moving on to 11:01, announcements, upcoming events. There will be an agenda committee meeting Wednesday, August 28th at 11 a.m. The next regularly scheduled governing board meeting is Wednesday, September 4th at 7 p.m. with an executive session at 6 p.m. The 2024 ASBA 48th Annual Law Conference will be September 4th to the 6th at the JW Marriott Camelback Inn. The 2024 ASBA Delegate Assembly will be September 7th at the same Camelback Inn. And finally, the East Valley School Boards Consortium will be hosted by Higley Unified School District on Monday, September 9th from 6 to 8 p.m. at their district office. 12:01, meeting adjournment.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Motion by Charlotte, seconded by Monica. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, motion carries. We are adjourned.